Welcome to Framework and the continuing Frameworks, John Carpenter's The Podcast. We are now talking about The Fog, John Carpenter's fourth film. With me, as always, is Al Schwartz.
Hi, John.
Hey! And joining us once again, sort of our resident horror expert, Brett Blake.
Wow.
Welcome back to the show, sir.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Somebody we needed to have for Carpenter. And when we asked you, like, what film would you like to come in and speak about? You were like, The Fog,
Yes.
which surprised me. That I was like, oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, part of that is I knew like the big heavy hitters were probably going to be snatched pretty early by, people who would want to talk about that. So I figured if I was going to request to appear on one, try to do like one of his more under the radar entries. And
This qualifies for that.
yeah. And I think to me, I'll just say it right up front. This is an imperfect movie, but it's the sort of movie where I love the vibe and the look and the sound of it so much that basically papers over some of the weaknesses that I think it clearly has. I just don't, they don't bother me very much because the experience of the movie I think is so strong.
Okay.
This must have got you at the right time of your life, I would think. Then,
yeah, I mean, this is a movie I saw when I was a kid. I went
Right.
through a Carpenter phase when I was probably like 11, 12 years old, where I decided, well, I'm going to see everything this guy's done. And it's the kind of movie that, and Carpenter's talked about this, he set out initially to make sort of a throwback kind of a chiller, like, nothing that was too terribly intense, the kind of movie that could have been made in the 40s or 50s, leaning very heavy, pun intended, on atmosphere. And that really worked for me growing up. And the thing about the setting of the movie being, sort of this seaside maritime locale that's got this sort of a dark history to it. There's this sort of dark maritime legend that the town is going to pay for the mistakes of its past. That's really appealing to me. Like, I like maritime type arcane mythology, and there is some of that in this movie.
a little bit, but it's not like there's sea creatures really. It's just it's ghosts. I mean, yeah, they're. I want to call them pirate ghosts. They're obviously not pirates, but in my head it is. I don't know where I got it drilled into me that these are all pirate ghosts. Because before I saw this,
They're functionally pirate ghosts. Kinda.
They're all branding swords. I mean,
yeah, they have cutlasses. So
yeah.
and they're of the sea, but and they're marauding. But so it occurred to me watching this, like, that I saw it in the wrong way. That being 40 and watching it on TV on my TV, and in the context of like, oh, this is a lesser Carpenter entry, and I'm familiar with his work and all of that. It's just like, yeah, this is a lesser Carpenter for sure. And it almost strikes me that the ideal way to have seen this would have been when I was 12 or 13 and flipping through the channels and just kind of accidentally turning it on 15 minutes into it and not really understanding what the full setup of it was, but just being sort of like dropping straight into the fog, as it were. That might almost have been the best way to have experienced this movie.
I think you're right about that, man. This is one that, I don't know, I feel like you can't really miss this, like, narratively. Like, there's nothing in this that matters to the plot. You don't need to know the story of the ghosts, and they'll be as effective. I mean, it's nice to know the story of the ghost. It's a decent ghost story.
But we kind of get told it twice too, which,
yeah,
right.
Because we get John Houseman at the opening sort of literally telling a ghost story around a campfire.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get sort of a further elaboration by Hal Holbrook's character, which I don't know that we needed both of these, but I like the mood that opening story from Houseman sets.
Apparently that was like the last thing they shot. It was a reshoot. They were just like, we need to explain this right up,
Well, there were a lot of reshoots, and we can get into that if you want to, but this is a movie that was very heavily reworked from what it was initially conceived to be.
Right. He was unhappy with the final version of this initial. Well, not the final version. They reshot everything, but like,
and the distributor was unhappy with it too.
That early kill on the boat of the fisherman, that getting killed, that apparently a reshoot. It was all just like, it sounds like the first 45 minutes of this movie was just like, hey, I think there's going to be a fog, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, almost the entire opening credits sequence was not initially part of the movie, with like the weird poltergeist activity happening in town. Like that wasn't initially part of the movie at all.
I feel it stretching for to build
for
stuff
feature
up.
length.
Yeah.
Like, because this should have been a Tales from the Crypt episode.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I can see that.
I really do feel like, having more explanation in it, I think only hurts it. Like I said, my instinct is that missing the introduction and the explanation might have actually been better here. The particular incarnation of that is, I feel like the thing that hurts this movie the most is capping the like amount of kills that they're going to do at 6. I was just like, this, I mean, especially when they burn through 3 or 4 on like red shirts on that fishing boat early on. I'm just like, oh no, ghost pirates, don't fill up on bread. What are you doing? So I know that we're going to get one person at the end because they only have one left on their sheet, and then they have bingo.
Towards the end, when we've got like all the characters in the church, it's like, well, we know that not all these people are going to die. They're like, they can't, because we're mathematically limited to the revenge scheme being only the number of conspirators from the past. So it's like, who am I really concerned about here? Who am I afraid is not going to make it out of this? And that maybe gets into sort of what I think one of the big weaknesses of the movie is for me, which is I don't feel like this movie knows what to do with the characters it has and the actors that it has assigned to these roles. Like, this is a very good cast. Like Janet Leigh, John Houseman, Hal Holbrook, like these are great, seasoned performers, and they're really not.
I'll ask you to put some respect on Adrienne Barbeau's name,
well,
you swine.
I was going to get to her because I think she's fantastic in this, but
she is.
It doesn't seem like these are really fleshed out characters. You know what it does feel like? This feels like an adaptation of a much more sprawling novel that for some reason they felt obligated to include every character, but then they dropped away or sanded down those characters' plot lines. Like if this were a Stephen King novel, each one of these characters would have kind of something interesting in their personal life going on that would somehow tie into the overall sort of supernatural plot. And we don't really get any of that here. It's like Janet Leigh's in a few scenes and she's worried about her husband, and that's kind of it.
I mean, you could probably remove Jamie Lee Curtis and Tom Atkins entirely from this movie, and it would affect
that is
the plot.
The weirdest. I mean, I like Jamie Lee in this movie, but I don't understand this character. It's like she's hitchhiking, then she and Tom Atkins are in bed very quickly, and then she sticks around. It's like,
well, we understand Tom Atkins's
the sheer sexual magnetism of Tom Atkins. But
he was peaking in 1980.
Yeah, like that's sort of one of his things is that he fucks a lot in these movies. It's just like,
yeah, it's the same in Halloween 3.
Yeah, exactly. And he's just like this goofball with
sexual dynamo.
Yeah.
I like him in this movie, and I like them together in theory, but the movie doesn't.
They just don't have anything to do.
Yeah,
yeah. This is one of the movies where I took 3 notes total on this movie. Like I started it and just didn't finish. One of them just said, "Don't fill up on bread." One said, "Feels like an adaptation of a lesser Stephen King novel."
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Which I think that's spot on. Said there, it does. To the point, it feels like you're right. It almost there are more people included because they were in an early draft or the original material or something,
right.
But they just don't really have a place in the actual events of the last half of the movie.
To me, the most interesting characters in the story are Stevie Wayne, played by Adrienne Barbeau, who's essentially our protagonist, and Hal Holbrook's priest, because he's the character who sort of takes the guilt of the town's secret upon himself, and that's really interesting. But he's
not in the middle of the movie.
Entirety of the middle of the movie, exactly.
Yeah,
like he shows up a little bit at the beginning. And, has sort of a crisis of faith and guilt. And then he shows up a little bit at the end, and that's it. Like, to me, this is a character who needed to be more centrally the focus of the movie, I think, because he's the one who has the most interesting stuff going on.
He's a real Stephen King character. I think that is pretty accurate. It's got the small town, it's got the supernatural, it's got the sprawling cast, but yeah, it doesn't have a plot really. It's kind of just all mood.
Yeah, it's atmosphere, which I guess is what fog is good for. It's a very cheap special effect to make things immediately spooky and kind of threatening. But I don't know. Yeah, this it feels like a watered down Carpenter. Like that. It's got the classic horror movie ending. The stinger of, okay, we vanquished the evil, but no, they come back for that last kill at the end credits. But it's got to be like the softest hitting one of those that I've encountered. Like one, that they didn't check the last box on they're supposed to get 6. I didn't quite understand why the gold temporarily sated them, but and then it's like, oh, and it's, of all the people here, it's like the old man priest who I had marked for death right from the beginning, who's also feels the guilt most acutely, and like I would think is most cool with paying this price of anybody. During the finale, I was like reminding myself, oh yeah, this is Carpenter. Like he could throw a nasty punch here. Like I was like, are they really going to do the thing where they give the gold to the ghosts and that like settles the debt, but like Stevie Wayne still falls off the top because she's mid struggle when they disappear or something. And I was like, Carpenter will kill the entire cast too if he doesn't hamstring himself with this checklist early on. So that's why I'm saying it feels watered down. Like it because it felt like just you remove that element even, and I almost believe that the majority of this cast could be killed by ghost cutlasses before this is over.
I mean, even Hallbrook seems surprised that they didn't kill him at the end. Like for the last 10 minutes of this movie, he's like, "You didn't want to kill me too, guys? I'm related to the guy. I'm explicitly the 6th victim. It seemed to me anyway." And then
I'll read the book again, but it seemed pretty cut and dried.
Yeah. Okay, so here's my thing with this movie. I grew up on the West Coast and spent a lot of summers on the Oregon coastline, which is pretty much exactly, it's a couple hundred miles from above fictional Antonio Bay would be. It is explicitly all this stuff. It is lighthouses and islets and small towns and a lot of fog, honestly, and this place is just
Tom Atkins just fucking his way through the streets.
Of course, yes, a lot of. I mean, he would have a push broom mustache in actual Oregon, but and there's so much supernatural ghost story kind of stuff there in a community like that. Everything's named after the devil, Devil's Punch Bowl, Devil's K. These are all actual places, there's so much superstition. And
wait, Devil's Punch Bowl is a real.
Devil's Punch Bowl is absolutely.
I thought there was a drink.
No,
that sounds like a brand new like extreme skiing section of the mountain that they opened in 2009.
It's like it's a big circular crater right on a cliffside on the shore that the ocean has carved a path into, and just it becomes a big roiling pile of rocks and waves during high tide. It's cool as shit. Yeah. But yeah, there's a lighthouse right above it. And so like I kind of grew up like, around exactly the kind of vibe that this movie is going for. And so it's kind of a bummer to me that this just sort of, it feels so surface level. I mean, it is just it's just like you took like a 5-minute ghost story and adapted it, Yes, you have extra characters. Yes, you got all this, but narratively, it's just like, well, 100 years ago, they killed these guys, and some say their ghosts come back at night for revenge, and that's the story. That's it. That's all you got. And it doesn't really bother to go anything beyond that. Now, I get that he's just coming off Halloween, which is similarly plotless and all about mood and tone, and very effective. Of course, as we were talking about in that episode, but like it feels like he's trying to pull the same thing again here. and he's trying to summon that campfire ghost story. I think maybe the John Houseman scene at the beginning, taken in isolation, is maybe my favorite scene in the movie because it feels like that. But it's all kind of just, I don't know. I think maybe I did have to be younger for this to work for me, because I came to it a little later, and I was just sort of like, that's it for the fog. And the pirate ghosts design is not particularly interesting. I don't think it's very scary that they kill you with cutlasses. I mean, it's the kind of story I want to like. And they found his body the next morning. He was drowned, or
I said, I don't want to be run through by a leper pirate ghost.
But it's the same as getting run through by, a normal pirate. It's essentially
or a normal leper. Well, they do some of that stuff, right? When they find the fishermen's bodies, and they have this scene in the morgue where the mortician's sort of like running down to Megan's like, I saw him yesterday. But he has all the signs of having been underwater for a month or something.
I like that scene very much, but we also did, see him get stabbed in the stomach with a sword.
Right. So there's no mystery about that. Is part of the problem, and also we know enough about the ghosts and their backstory and their modus operandi that it doesn't track with me at all why they would be able to do extra drowny sea magic or something. I'm not sure what that is. Like, if they are creatures of the sea explicitly, I would kind of understand that a little more, I guess.
Yeah, there is a lot of strange and totally unexplained extra magic that happens in this movie.
Yes.
It's like you've got that opening chunk where the town is sort of going haywire. Mm-hmm. And I know they cover themselves by explaining, well, this is the hour during which the conspiracy was formed 100 years ago. So that's why this is happening during this hour, but it's never explained exactly. I guess just sea ghosts can make, car horns turn on for no reason. But
that's part of why this feels watered down, is that Carpenter will do a lot of this stuff to greater effect in Prince of Darkness. The sort of enveloping evil rolling over the town and causing all sorts of eldritch madness to start occurring, and even like this sort of siege scenario in the church that finishes up this film will make up the bulk of a Prince of Darkness, if I'm remembering correctly from seeing it once 15 or 20 years ago.
No, it is.
It's definitely one of his siege movies, yes.
And the better Stephen King movies, or books, I guess, also a lot of them like to play around with this type of stuff, sort of evil seeping into a town and causing all sorts you get that in It and Needful Things. Salem's Lot and all. I mean, that's one of his favorite things. And when done well, that's really good, but it requires, I guess, that's more of a mini-series thing than a 90-minute thing. And this is trapped between being a Tales from the Crypt episode and being a full-blown Stephen King miniseries that has this play out over weeks or something.
The explicit Stephen King story would be The Mist, I would think. Which
of course, yeah, that would too.
Like you've got, it's a small town, and it's a coastal town, and a mist rolls in, and there's things in the mists, and oh shit, what? It's all real. There's monsters.
Yeah, now we're holed up in a building trying to keep them out.
Yeah, another siege actually. It's more of a. I mean, I don't think it reminds you specifically of this because it's much more ambitious. In the things it's taking on and the way it's presenting the mist, in this, it really is just like, well, there's a fog, and it's kind of coming with these pirate ghosts, and they're coming to kill 6 people because, well, you're going to hear the story a few times, and that's it. What do you want?
And the other thing is, mist and fog are essentially the same thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. The Mist is just a much better title than The Fog, right?
Yeah.
You guys feel that in the same way I do? Mist is a more mysterious word.
I mean, yeah, it's got mist right in there, which is, the first part of mysterious. Yeah. So, of course.
It seems ominous to me that, whatever. It sounds more Arthurian somehow. I don't know. But fog is just, it's a slight inconvenience when you're trying to drive across town. So that's a minor point, but I think it just shows that this feels like a lesser version of things in like all respects, down to being John Carpenter's. We just came off an excellent John Carpenter siege movie, and this has, a bit of that in the climax, but it's a pale shade of what Assault on Precinct 13 pulls off. We just came off a classic John Carpenter horror movie, and this, maybe he wants to consciously doesn't want to make just killing women his thing. So the only real casualty we get is the old man priest that is ready to check out anyway, it seems. But it feels like it's a softer version of John Carpenter horror, and it's I don't know, just it feels like it does 8 different things, and there are better examples of those things pretty close at hand in all cases.
I mean, yeah, like that's the thing. I'm almost a bit lost. Like, what can I even bring to a conversation about this film? This is, I mean, I think he's made worse films that I like more too. I mean, this one is kind of, I wouldn't say it lacks personality, because it has all this personality. We're talking about maritime superstition. That's well, frankly, I love that. I mean, as I've talked about regarding David Ayer's The Lighthouse, very much my jam. I want characters to deliver long monologues about the nature of the sea and drowning and superstition and ghosts and albatrosses and all the things that you would want here. And The Fog has some of that. It kind of has to lean on that sometimes because there's no plot to speak of. But
well, it doesn't have enough of it. It's not really a sea movie. It's the ghosts come from the sea, but it all the action's on land. They take it. I mean, I guess they kill the red shirts on the boat, but I would have liked if they could have contrived a reason to have people on the water when the ghosts were attacking. I think I might have liked that better in the end.
Could have been.
I mean, a Siege where you get all the characters together. Like we said, this good cast. You get Janet Leigh, Atkins, Jamie Lee Curtis, Adrienne Barbeau, Hal Holbrook. You put them all in a room together or on a boat together under siege from pirate zombies, and I think that's probably just narratively going to be a more effective thing, a more memorable thing, at least.
I mean, the thing that's interesting about Barbeau's character is that she's never with any of the rest of the cast. I mean, she's with her son, kind of, and she talks to people over the phone or via the radio, but she never interacts with the rest of the characters, and that's an unusual choice. Now, I think I like Barbeau's performance so much in this movie that I don't really care, and I think there is something kind of cool about the idea that she's in a position to sort of like see the entire town, and she's like sort of communicating to people where the fog is moving and stuff. I like that. But you would think in a more satisfyingly structured story, you would end up with all of your characters together at the end, rather than 99% of your characters together and your one main character completely in another location.
I don't know. I think you can have sort of intercut climaxes in a way. And I do like the conceit of her being isolated in the lighthouse and being the only one, because she's in the lighthouse and on the radio, the only one who can, once the fog rolls in, see and communicate what's going on to anybody.
Yes.
But she's more isolated. I do kind of think that in the proper version, if this is the good Stephen King version of this story, she would have been killed off 2/3, 3/4 of the way in. And so that the people under siege are completely isolated at a certain point and don't have that lifeline to any outside world.
She is the only character I remotely care about, I will say.
Me too. I mean, I think she's the best character.
Yeah.
But I also think this movie is lacking in nastiness a little bit, or maybe I don't know, it's lacking in something, and that's what I'm fixing on as the quickest fix.
I think that's kind of intentional, though, because again, reading up on what Carpenter's mindset for this was, we have to go back. Carpenter didn't think Halloween, that was just a gig for him. He always talks about how he kind of downplays Halloween, especially in later years after he made it. It's like, oh yeah, I took this thing, The Babysitter Murders, and I changed the title, and it did okay. For a while, he thought it was a flop. Like he didn't realize that it was like actually making significant money. And I think he kind of
he downplays all of his best stuff, though, doesn't he?
Except The Thing. The Thing is the one you can tell when he talks about it. He is really miffed that didn't connect at the time.
Yeah, well, that was a genuine flop too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All his best movies were flops. Well,
I think he kind of considered this, just a movie. Like there was nothing particularly special about this to him, except the idea of trying to do more of a low key sort of throwback chiller which is probably what he initially shot. And then he looked at it, and Avco Embassy, the distributors, looked at it, and they're like, "This is not. There's nothing scary about this. Like you've gone too low key."
Mhm.
And that's where then they go back in, and basically any close up tight shot of like a weapon striking somebody was reshot. Like there was basically no violence whatsoever on screen in that initial version. And it's interesting that even after they've gone back and put stuff like that in, it still feels very, I don't want to say neutered, but it still feels lacking in intensity, let's say. Which I don't mind, because to me this is a vibe movie, and the vibe works for me. And when I talk about the vibe, I'm talking about Dean Cundy's cinematography and John Carpenter's score. Like I think this is one of his very best scores to me. Like it,
I think they all are, though.
That's a high bar.
It is.
There's no lesser ones in my book. Like I guess Halloween's probably the best of the lot, but still.
I mean, I don't know if I want to listen to Ghosts of Mars anytime.
So, I haven't done that one at all yet, so we'll get there.
Get ready for a lot of
a new rock,
heavy metal, wailing guitar. And,
really?
Yeah. No, I like sort of the quiet piano stuff that really, like in the opening scene with Houseman telling the story of the ship. If you go and listen to that cue on its own, it's really effectively sort of haunting and chilling. And that whole vibe saturates the movie for me to such an extent that like I can forgive that the violence feels kind of insignificant, and that there's these issues with the characters not really being serviced very well, and all that stuff, because I just enjoy the imagery and the sound of the picture.
Yeah, it's not bad in that regard. And a Carpenter score definitely always enhances that ambiance. That's one of our favorite things. Can I talk to you guys about ghosts a bit?
Oh yes,
sure.
Please.
I think maybe this is part of what I bump on here is I don't know how you guys feel about ghosts generally, either in.
Oh, I'm pro ghost for sure. Yeah, very very
I'm
much.
kind of anti-ghost. Well, so I know there are people out there. I'm always surprised who I run across in my life who just like nonchalantly, sincerely believes in ghosts out in the world, or the equivalent of ghosts. And I don't buy the idea of ghosts whatsoever. And it mainly comes down to, I think for me, mainly just the why would they care type of thing. Like I can't imagine that being freed from this mortal coil and the bounds of corporeality or whatever, you're going to spend hundreds of years trying to make sure nobody moves into your old house or something. Like it just doesn't. I don't get why any ghost would care enough to want to hurt me if such a thing did exist. And so in fiction, ghosts always need a reason to be hurting people. And but the problem with that then is that it becomes a thing where, well, I don't really buy the ghosts, like they have their aim or whatever, and they're gonna, like I said, they're gonna kill 6 people here. If it's a Guillermo del Toro movie, they're probably just gonna kill the bad guy in the end, and after causing a couple of frights.
There will be a very sympathetic and tragic backstory that makes us care about the ghosts.
Right. And that they can be satisfied, and ultimately they're not seeking the destruction of everybody we care about in this film. These ghosts sort of are, but also, like I said, they have a quota. So it's a little iffy. So like my best version of ghosts are the ones that are just outright evil and malicious for no fully defined purpose, but just want to harm humanity as a whole or whatever.
Like Poltergeist.
The Exorcist, Poltergeist, The Shining. They just want to hurt.
Where ghosts
people
are more an embodiment of the idea of evil more than a specific dead individual who has come back for a purpose.
Yes, who has unfinished business, because I just know, okay, well, this is a movie with a narrative structure. We're going to finish that business and they'll go away. So, but maybe that's more of a me thing than a general, issue with ghosts in horror fiction. I don't know.
Well, it's a pretty elastic subject. I mean, you can do a lot of different things with ghosts, like The Shining. They don't have unfinished business. They're just asshole ghosts. I like the version of ghosts where, they're stuck on this on Earth because they cannot let go of their rage, or they can't let go of something that happened. Like it's a curse, the ghost is the thing. Being a ghost is the scary part. Like, you know, that you it's a form of purgatory or hell or something like that, where they're just stuck in a location because um, some great wrong has been done to them, but more likely because they can't get over something. Like it's a message or a fable about being able to let things go. Of course, that's not how they're used in the fog. In the fog, they're the subject of a campfire ghost story. They're, I think, as simple as like, and then the ghost showed up. You know, like it is a gotcha, and any sort of backstory for them is intentionally kind of straightforward and familiar. It's just like, well, they want revenge, you know, because they got killed.
Yeah, it's quantifying the revenge is the problem for me.
Um, yeah,
It
it's.
just wanted
I think
eternal suffering upon the people that wronged them with no end to it. That would be much scarier to me than 6 counting down to 4, counting down to 3, counting down to 2, counting down to 1, and bye bye.
and it's diffuse too, because it's like, and well, it's actually their ancestors, and we're just gonna stab them with a sword, and so it's sort of like it's the least interesting version of the ghost to me, is just the the campfire version, when it's removed from the context of sort of a visceral thrill. You know, if you're not sitting around a campfire trying to scare children or adults, it's just sort of the shallow version of the ghost. So yeah, I think it's up against the wall already there. You know, and like, as opposed to the escaped lunatic in Halloween, you know, another old trope. That one has a visceral kind of immediacy to it that,
Mhm.
you do that right, then it is terrifying, because everyone is aware that that is a real thing. You know, once you're over the age of, I don't know, probably like 13 years old or so, you're not particularly worried that a ghost is going to kill you with a sword. You know, it's just sort of, I mean, if this movie were more successful at kind of throwing you back into childhood and giving you sort of that primal terror of the dark, you know, like a Skinamarink kind of deal, you know, like if it were able to achieve that, I think then that would be my ideal version of the fog, and that's a tough one, because we're just not really scared of ghosts in that way.
It is interesting to contrast it to Halloween, because I think Halloween actually like squares that circle so elegantly. Is where the power of Halloween comes from, is that yes, he is an escaped mental patient, which is a very earthbound, graspable threat, but it also, so effectively codes him as the boogeyman. And like, is he
Yeah.
just a crazy guy, or is there that he's some more amorphous force of unstoppable evil moving around? And it kind of has that both ways, I think, more successfully than the fog has the broad atmospheric stuff, and then also the the pirate's steel cutting through you.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's not. I mean, I guess if you were trying to say like, here's the two planes it's working on. One is, the sort of childhood dread of the dark, that a ghost story kind of taps into, and then the other one is, well, the reality of pirate ghosts attacking you with swords, and neither of those. I think the first one you can make a movie out of. The second one is tougher, and neither of them really land here. It's a frustrating movie to me, because I've come back to this a few times, because I'm just like, well, it's about pirate ghosts. Surely I like the fog, and it's not that I dislike it. It's just that I don't. I don't know, if John Carpenter had not directed this film, I can't imagine that I would continue to give it chances, because I just think it's kind of a simple, middling, not particularly memorable story, I'm afraid.
It's not bad.
No.
It's a very average horror movie to me. That again, if I had come across it on the right afternoon at the right time in my life, it would have been very memorable to me as, oh yeah, that's one of the really good ones. I mean, that's my theory anyway, and Brett is here to embody it for me.
Yeah, I mean, I can't deny that probably my affection for this movie stems from, my first couple experiences watching it, and the things that I was able to pull from it at that time. You know, John, you mentioned, growing up sort of in areas that immediately sort of looked like they looked like Antonio Bay. Like you're
Yeah.
familiar with that. So it's
Yeah.
like I grew up in the Midwest, but I spent a lot of time on the Great Lakes, and I've been to a lot of lakeside towns in Wisconsin and Michigan and Minnesota that did not look too terribly dissimilar from Antonio Bay. And so I could kind of associate that with like, hey, this could be happening, not too far from where I am. And so I've got that kind of affection for it on that level, and it's hard to shake that for me. So when I watch the movie, I'm enjoying how it looks. I'm enjoying. I think there actually is some great imagery in the movie, like when the guys are out, the first victims, they're out on the ship, the Seagrass, and the fog bank rolls in, and the couple guys go up on deck, and they see the mast of this old schooner passing by their boat through the fog. Like that's a really cool shot. And then they turn around and there's just these figures standing there very still, silhouetted, sort of backlit through the fog. I love that shot. Like that to me is like a very effectively creepy in a classic kind of ghost story way. And there are a couple other moments like that in the movie. And to me, those moments are worth putting up with all the other things you guys have talked about and that I've talked about that we don't think work very much or very well.
It's not a movie that I feel like you have to put up with so much. There's nothing in this I'm rolling my eyes at. It's like a 3 out of 5 kind of just like, it's fine. It's fine. And that's okay and all. It just sort of feels a little generic within the context of this filmography, and following the movie that it is following, coming before the movie it's coming before. It's just sort of like it feels like an afterthought a little bit.
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
It is odd that I would say this feels like a like a for hire gig that he did. Otherwise,
he did a few of those. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I never, with just looking at the movies, have guessed that Halloween was the one that the script was kind of handed to him, and he just kind of did the thing. I'm like, all right, whatever. And that The Fog is the one that he kind of labored over more. It just, I don't know. I guess it goes to show you can't read as much backwards from the final products as you want to, especially in a medium as complicated and collaborative as film.
You know what this really reminded me of was, or maybe what I would like to see done with this is this feels like a Universal Studios Hollywood or Florida haunted house that you would go see and for Halloween Horror Nights. Like I think that is a perfect venue for the fog, because first off, you can just pump a room full of fog, put people in pirate and ghost costumes, and have them jump out at you and like around from the corner. That seems like it would be a good fun time, like I would enjoy that.
Yeah,
you do like just sort of old maritime legends, John Houseman as you walk in is like, and they say the ghosts still walk, like that's that sort of visceral quality, that simple, graspable kind of quality to this. I mean, I feel like that's what this is chasing, and that might even be a better venue for it than a narrative film. It's just
could be right.
Here's this ghost story, and you're getting chased by things, and there's fog, so you can't see very well, and that sort of immediate reaction is it.
The main reason you couldn't do that now is just that people would go into it and go, so this is a Pirates of the Caribbean Halloween theme? That's what we're doing now? Like, the actual pirate ghosts that they did there, I think, really overshadowed the fog in the popular culture.
Well, sure, yeah. I mean, well, you make careful effort to, well, first off, you just call it it's John Carpenter's The Fog attraction. And, sure. And then you can't say pirates. You say, leper mariners.
That's true.
I guess. I don't know. I
so much punchier, leopard mariners. But you think, okay.
Do we want to say anything else about Adrienne Barbeau? Let's sing her praises a little more here before we wrap up. Because
she has a great radio voice.
Yeah, she walks away with it. Sultry. Yeah.
I was going to say, wait, so you think that the haunted house feature is branded as John Carpenter's The Fog and not Rupert Wainwright's The Fog.
Ah, well,
To
yes.
bring in the kids.
I mean, look, I watched the Rupert Wainwright Fog this week. I did. I saw it, the 2005 remake, and if you want an appreciation of how good the original is, that's a good way to do it.
I did the same.
Oh man!
And on the one hand, for a little while, I was like, "Wait, is this an okay remake?" For like, I don't know, 30 minutes or so, because I was like, they seem to have fixed the main gripe I have with the old one, which is we don't cap the number of people these guys are going to kill. But then as it goes on, it gets more and more into, oh no, every character is the direct descendant of one of the conspirators and blah, blah. And it gets into a different, I mean, it replaces Jamie Lee Curtis with Maggie Grace.
That's rough. Ooh, that's rough.
Just the height of 2005 CW hubris. But
the height of her Lost fame.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the salad years for Maggie Grace, in fact.
Yeah, he meant Lost the show fame, but it could have worked capital or lowercase L on that. So she's a step down. Selma Blair is actually a decent, Adrienne Barbeau substitute as the new Stevie Wayne. I think that was the best thing it did. Removing the kill cap, but then they replaced it with a bunch of other dumb stuff. The mythology is even more thuddingly explicated, and the horror movie trope ending it goes with, as opposed to the Carrie one last kill exit, is just incredible. Suddenly in the very end, it's like, and now he's gonna take Maggie Grace away because she's gonna be a ghost bride. She's the reincarnation of his lost something, that whole shtick. The Bram Stoker's Dracula, the mummy thing. Oh, we were in the thousands of years ago and you were a different person.
They cast the bum from Batman Begins as the pirate captain. That's fun, right?
that's why he looked kind of familiar. But it's PG-13 also. Just bad decisions all around.
It's among the worst remakes I've ever seen. It is a terrible film. And this is a film that I think is a good one to remake. Actually, you can do a better version of The Fog, I believe. And they did a considerably worse one with that. It's just poorly made too. That's another thing. The original Fog, say what you will about it, is directed by John Carpenter. He's not fucking that up in a technical sense. Man, that new one, ooh, that's bad.
Yeah, it does seem like you could just kind of. It's amazing how much worse it is, because it seems like you could just kind of go shot for shot with the new actors and updated effects and be okay. You would probably still get a 2.5 star to 3 star movie out of that. But no, they had to go Ghost Bride. It really felt very arbitrary at the end. I was like, wait, I know I wasn't paying super close attention to this movie, but have we really set this up at all? So kudos to John Carpenter for not going that route.
Yeah, and it also it's very silly that I'm noticing that seems like a big age discrepancy between the leper ghost pirate and his bride here. Mm-hmm. Not just because it's 150 years later. Yeah. There looks like a good 35 years between them in the flashbacks as well. I'm not buying this as a love for the ages.
Right. I mean, the one thing I got here, the remake, that I thought would have been nice to have had in the original, that you probably could have done, is one of the kills there is basically ghost pirate touches somebody and they get fast onset leprosy and just kind of rot away. And it's the 2005 effects aren't the best, but that's better than being stabbed with a cutlass.
It's something, and yeah, it is a bit hamstrung by being some of the worst effects that you can imagine for such a thing. It looks like it looks mummy-ish. And
but without the charm that the mummy brings to the proceedings.
Yeah, it looks mummy.
Mummy Returns.
Yeah, or Dragon Emperor, or whatever, the lesser mummy, one of the lesser mummies. And I mean, look, it's rotten to the core. It's a very bad one. I mean, like I said, I think The Mist is the better remake of this in a lot of ways, even as it's not a completely different thing. It is still kind of you want a scary mist with monsters in it and people freaking out about it. Well, here's the version of it I would recommend.
I was going to say that I think that more than the Fog remake or Pirates of the Caribbean, the thing that impeding another Fog remake being good is the Mist, because the more you drag this in the direction that I think I want it to go, the more it just becomes the Mist.
Yeah. Or I guess if I were to remake this film again, I would lean heavily into Lighthouse kind of stuff, old timey folklore, maritime superstition. I don't know, maybe even remove some of the more obvious plot threads and just and again, I'm making this more like the Mist rather than the Fog. Once you take off the Alexander Dane ship and the leper colony, I mean, is it even the Fog anymore?
Well, like
No.
you were saying earlier, do something where you're actually getting more sequences out on the water.
Yeah.
That'd be a way to distinguish itself.
I think the town's 100 year, centennial celebration should be a boat regatta, and when the mist rolls in and cuts it off, and so you have everybody kind of stuck out on the water.
Jaws 2 meets the Fog. Perfect.
There you go.
It's not bad, actually. I think that's kind of cool. Do that, and I don't know. I mean, throw as much weird maritime folklore as you can into this. Like that's something I always enjoy. You mentioned the Great Lakes, like just throw Edmund Fitzgerald imagery in here.
Yeah.
There's a big storm at sea, and and it's you're equally worried about just the ship getting capsized, or I don't know. I'm just spitballing here.
Or do more strange touches. There's the thing in the movie where Stevie Wayne's kid sees like the gold coin, and he goes to pick it up, and suddenly it transforms into a piece of the ship's hull for no reason. Like, go, do something, kind of take off that, like build off that kind of strange sea magic touches. Like, I'd be interested in more of that. You don't even have to explain it. Just like do more unusual maritime type paranormal stuff.
Well, on this we agree. More maritime folklore for sure.
We are a pro strange sea magic podcast. Always have been.
All right. We found occasion to talk about strange sea magic and times where it's not merited. I think, like Titanic, quite a bit.
We live in a cinematic time of strange undersea action epics. I've been struck by lately. That we've done not just a Titanic episode recently, but we've done a Wakanda Forever podcast. We've done an Avatar 2 Way of the Water podcast. We have not done an Aquaman podcast, but there's still, I think, another one of those coming up.
Yep.
This movie I saw had a Little Mermaid trailer in front of it that took me a while to realize it was a Little Mermaid. So I was like, are we doing another big underwater action movie?
Yes.
Yeah.
I know. Underwater's hot right now, but just the horror has not caught up to action.
I wish they made that weird Aquaman spin-off about the fish monsters. Do you remember this? The Trench they were going to make?
That would have been fun.
Yeah.
I actually did you guys see Underwater, the Kristen Stewart giant underwater monster movie?
Of course I
No.
Underwater, yes.
I kind of liked that. I thought that was kind of fun. Like, that's the kind of movie that you just don't see a studio making anymore, and for some reason they made it. And of course it didn't make any money, but
they never do.
I got a kick out of it.
Yeah. I mean, you can't really point to the successful underwater horror movie, is the thing.
No, The Abyss, I guess, is the closest you get.
Which is his big flop. That's his only flop. So, yeah.
Right.
I mean, you can
and
get...
also
you
not
can
even
get
really a horror movie?
hits.
Nope.
You can get stuff that, people will fly the flag for later on, like Leviathan. Like, I like Leviathan. That's a fun B-monster movie. But, it was not a hit when it came out.
No. I mean...
No, it's just the Jaws franchise, really.
And even there, it's just the one.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Deep Rising.
Hey, it's a good one. It's
a
a fine underwater horror movie, but yeah, also a flop. Have you seen that, Al? You would love that. That's it's a good time.
I mean, back when it was in theaters, I believe I saw it. It was the last time.
I had that. That was I made people come watch that for my 40th birthday. That was I had all my friends come. It's Deep Rising Day. Yeah, that was a good call.
I remember going to see that around the same time as I went to see Virus.
Ooh, yeah.
Jamie Lee Curtis starring
Donald
Ghost Ship.
Sutherland,
Which, you're right. Not enough ghost ships out there.
Not enough successful ghost ships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think my parents took me to Virus for my birthday. Like my 12th birthday, we went to see Virus. That was an interesting choice.
It's I mean, I don't know. When I was 12, I probably would have liked Virus.
I remember liking it at the time,
Yeah.
but I haven't watched it since, so I'm sure it's not good.
Oh no, I'm sure.
No, it's not.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have, it's ultimately like a science fiction thing more than a strange sea magic thing.
Isn't it like an
is not going
alien
to scratch our itch here.
electronic signal takes over the
Yeah.
ship and it's like cyborg type stuff? Machines,
Yes.
like they turned Donald Sutherland into a machine at one point, I think. Or
I
Yeah,
seem
but it's
to
a late
remember that.
90s like cyborg, like kind of lawnmower man type thing.
We're
Look,
running out of steam. We are running
I'm-
out of steam here. We're talking about the plot of Virus.
And I'm getting nostalgic for Ghost Pirates.
I-
No, like, you know what? Ghost Pirates aren't so bad
the simplicity of Ghost Pirates.
when compared with a Donald Sutherland wear computer, a cyborg thing. Yeah, I'll take Ghost Pirates every time.
Yeah, well,
Well,
okay.
thanks, Brett.
So, thank you,
You're
Brett.
welcome.
Thank you. More
Yo-ho,
Ghost
yo-ho.
Pirates, Hollywood, please. And yeah, thank you for listening to the John Carpenter's Frameworks, our show. Thank you for listening to our show, Framework, and yeah, next up is Escape from New York. As we continue on with our John Carpenter explorations. All right, thank you for listening.